Hey everyone, and welcome back to the 5 p.m. podcast. I'm Dan, and as always, I'm here with Tina.
Hey everybody, glad to be back. And Dan, I'm already sensing some serious political knowledge energy from you today. What's got you so fired up?
Oh, you know me, Tina, always ready to dive into the latest political happenings. But this one's a doozy. We're talking about the Laken Riley Act. And it's sparking some really interesting conversations, especially with some Democratic senators like Ruben Gallego getting behind it.
Okay, wait, the Laken Riley Act? That's the one named after the young woman in Georgia, right? The one that's all about changing immigration detention rules?
That's the one. It's a pretty big shift, especially when you consider the usual positions on immigration. This act is, it's stirring the pot, to say the least.
So for anyone who hasn't been glued to the news, what exactly does this act do? And why is it such a big deal that people like Senator Gallego are supporting it?
All right, so basically, the Laken Riley Act is designed to broaden the rules for mandatory detention of undocumented immigrants. We're talking about folks who've been arrested for, charged with, or even just admitted to crimes like shoplifting or theft. It's named after Laken Riley, a 22-year-old nursing student in Georgia who was tragically killed, allegedly, by an undocumented immigrant.
That's heavy. So it's a direct response to that tragedy?
Yeah, it is. And it's getting bipartisan support, which is, it's not something you see every day in immigration policy. 10 Democratic senators, including Gallego, Mark Kelly, and John Ossoff, voted to advance it.
Interesting. So, what's the rationale behind these senators' support? I mean, Gallego's usually pretty vocal about immigrant rights.
That's the thing, right? It seems like there's a shift happening. Some folks are saying that Democrats in more competitive states are trying to, show they're tough on immigration to avoid being painted as weak on the issue.
Politics. It's kind of like when you adjust your strategy in a game based on what your opponent is doing, right?
Exactly. And this act, it gives state attorneys general the power to sue the federal government over immigration enforcement decisions. Can you imagine the legal battles?
Oh, I can see the headlines now. But on a more serious note, what are people saying about the potential impact of this act, like on the ground, in communities?
Well, there are some serious concerns. Groups like the ACLU are saying this could lead to a surge in detentions, even for minor offenses. And when you detain someone, it's not just them. It's their families, their jobs, their whole lives disrupted.
Right, and we're talking about communities that are already feeling the pressure. I've been reading about the potential impact on Latino communities. More fear, more distrust of law enforcement.
And then there's the economic side of it. I mean, think about all the industries that rely on immigrant labor. If you suddenly have a large number of people being detained, that's got to have a ripple effect,
So beyond the immediate political implications, this act could really reshape the whole landscape of immigration enforcement in the U.S., huh? It's not just about one law, it's about the direction the country is moving in.
That's it, exactly. And it's not just domestic policy either. This could affect international relations, visa policies. I mean, we could be talking about a whole new ballgame.
It's a lot to unpack. For sure. It makes you wonder, what's the bigger picture here? Are we seeing a fundamental shift in how both parties approach immigration?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's something we'll be keeping a close eye on. This act, it's not just a piece of legislation. It's a sign of the times.
Well, Dan, as always, you've given us a ton to think about. This has been a really insightful conversation.
Anytime, Tina. It's these kinds of discussions that make me so excited about what we do here on the podcast.
Absolutely. And to our listeners, thanks for tuning in to the 5 p.m. podcast. We'll be back next week with more deep dives into the issues that matter.
Stay curious, everyone.